Mohammed, nice to see you.
Hello, hello, hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. We're having a lot of snow here in Washington, so um,
Uh, could
it's
you please give us a little bit here in Saudi because we want to turn into green.
nice to see you.
Yeah, yeah, nice to see you again.
Hey everyone,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good and you?
I think we are on time. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know that we are attending from different part of the world, where it is in the morning and in the evening. I want to welcome you in this inaugural webinar, Geo-Empower webinar series, which are being prepared by DGKIC. We are starting today with the first one, which is going to be sustainable funding for geospatial information. So this webinar will be for 3 hours, where we'll be covering a different session. Especially, we'll be hearing from different speakers, high level speaking, and then we go deep into sustainable funding guide, which was recently launched, and then we continue to hear different case studies from countries, Rwanda, Turkey, and China, where they will be explaining exactly how the geospatial investment is returning different benefit to the country. And then we deep dive into panel discussion to go deep, where member state and the expert will be explaining exactly how to sustainably funding the geospatial information and presenting the investment to a policymaker. And then we'll close with what is going to be the future of this sustainable funding guide we are launching today. And we will now close with key takeaway and what are going to be the next step. So I think now we almost have attendees, and we are going to start. I want to give the floor to Engineer Al-Mabluk, who is the chair of the Sustainable Funding Guide Working Group, to give us the opening remark, and also give the floor to speakers for this event. Thank you very much.
Hamid Al-Mabruk, I think you have to open your mic.
So thank you, Mr. John. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure as a co-chair of the UNIGIF Sustainable Funding Working Group to welcome you to this global webinar in promoting the UNIGIF Sustainable Funding Guide and the return investment for the geospatial information. Allow me first to begin with brief words on the UNIGIF Sustainable Funding Working Group. So the working group was established under the high-level group of the IGIF framework to address one of the most important challenges faced by member states, which is securing sustainable and long-term finance and financing for the national geospatial information systems. And our mandate has been to move beyond fragmented and short-term funding approaches to develop a practical guidance that support countries in building credible resilience and diversified financing model aligned with national priorities and development objectives. So through strong cooperation among member states, experts, and partners, and with the value support of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the working group has successfully developed the UNIGIF Sustainable Funding Guide and the one-page flyer. And with this completion of this guide, I'm pleased to note that formal work of the Sustainable Funding Working Group has now been concluded, and the guide has been handed over to the UN Global Geospatial Knowledge and Innovation Center, which will lead its dissemination, capacity building, and practical application to support member states going forward. So today's webinar, therefore, marks not only a global promotion of the guide, but it's also an important transition from development to implementation. So, as John mentioned, through this webinar, we will hear from member states and experts who will share practical experience, case studies, insights on how geospatial investment generate tangible economic, social, and environmental return. And this discussions are intended to strengthen investment cases, to support meaningful engagement with finance ministries, donors, and development partners. So allow me to thank the UN Global Geospatial Knowledge and Innovation Center, the UN GGIM Secretariat, and the high-level group on IGIF, and all members of the Sustainable Funding Working Group for their commitment and cooperation. And also, I would like to warmly welcome all participants who's joining us today. So now proceeding into the event, it is my honor to invite His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Al-Sayed, the co-chair of the UN GGIM and the president of the General Authority for Survey and Geospatial Information in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to deliver his opening remarks. So, Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Hello, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the UNGGIM and the General Authority for Survey and Geospatial Information of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to this global webinar on UNIGIF Sustainable Funding Guide and Return on Investment for Geospatial Information. I would like to thank the UN Global Geospatial Knowledge and Innovation Center and the UN GGIM Secretariat, the high-level group in IGIF, and the UN IGIF Sustainable Funding Working Group for their leadership and collaboration. I also warmly welcome all member states, regional committees, international organizations, development partners, academia, and private sector, and representatives joining us today. Geospatial information has become a fundamental element for achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and supporting informed evidence-based decision-making. Through the adoption of the United Nations Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, member states share common vision for building a strong integrated national geospatial ecosystem. However, many countries continue to face challenges in securing sustainable financing and clearly demonstrating the value of geospatial investments. Today's webinar directly addressed these challenges, and the UN IGIF Sustainable Funding Guide offers practical and actionable pathways for establishing long-term sustainable financing models, complemented by a strong focus on return on investments, and it helps demonstrate how geospatial information deliver measurable economic, social, and environmental benefits across multiple sectors. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is proud to sponsor and support this important initiative. We believe that investing in the geospatial information is an investment in the national development, resilience, and the future readiness. Through continued international cooperation and knowledge sharing, we can ensure that all countries are empowered to translate the UNIGIF from a strategic framework into real impact on the ground. The finance underpins the outputs of the country level action plans. With what I wish you and productive and engaging webinar, and I thank you all for being cooperative in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for these strategic and inspiring remarks. I now invite Mr. Geo, representing the UN GGIM Secretariat, to provide remarks from the Secretariat perspective. So, Mr. Geo, the floor is yours.
Mabruk, dear colleagues, dear partners, member states, regional committee chairs. It's a pleasure to welcome you and to open this important discussion on sustainable funding guide of the United Nations Integrated Geospatial Information Framework. I want to congratulate the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as well as Mozambique, for leading this important piece of work. And I also want to extend a congratulations to my colleagues from the UNGGKIC for organizing this webinar. Geospatial information today underpins almost every national priorities: climate action, disaster risk reduction, infrastructure, planning, land administration, public health, food security, or economic development. Yet despite its strategic values, many countries continue to struggle with one fundamental challenge: how to sustainably fund geospatial information management in the face of competing national priorities. This brings me to my first key message, is that sustainable geospatial systems require sustained national investment. And the funding guide is clear on that point. Geospatial information must be treated as a long-term national investment, not as a series of short-term projects. Sustainable funding depends on national ownership, strong engagement with ministries of finance, and the ability to clearly articulate the costs, benefits, and returns on investments. The guide also provides practical approaches to budgeting, economic assets, and also cost-benefit analysis, enabling countries to build credible investment cases and demonstrate how geospatial information delivers values well beyond the geospatial community itself. This is really a key lessons from implementing the UNIGIF, and something that we've heard from many countries when going around the countries through our workshops and capacity development activities in the headquarters. The key lessons is that it is really important to involve Ministry of Finance early on when developing country-level action plans and attempting to integrate geospatial information management. So as a good practice, as highlighted, it is important to involve Ministry of Finance early on when developing a country-level action plan. Second, sustainability depends on integrated and cross-sectoral approach. As we've seen in many cases, fragmented investments across ministries and projects lead to duplication, inefficiencies, and missed opportunities. The guide indeed reinforces the importance of aligning geospatial funding across sectors in the different ministries that is from your countries, so that we can achieve economies of scale, interoperability, and greater impact for your national priorities and global agendas. Integrated planning also allows countries to maximize public investments, reduce long-term costs, and ensure that geospatial data and services are fit for multiple users and purposes. In the current circumstances around the world, the argument is even more important, with less and less ability to finance new projects and new activities. The good housekeeping and investment across sector is an important argument that you may wish to consider. Third, sustainable funding is built on partnerships, as mentioned by Dr. Aysarel and Mr. Al-Mabrouk. It is important to build on partnerships and also on actions. The guide does not prescribe a single funding model, but instead try to highlight a range of options from domestic budget allocations, cost recovery mechanisms, or development assistance, private and public partnerships, and also the collaboration with academia and private sector. The guide itself is only a tool. Its value rests in how country uses those recommendations, engage with partner, and translate those guidance into concrete financing strategies. This is something that has been also key, understanding challenges of many countries, particularly developing countries. We have to think about connecting the dots, whether in national context or with the international donors and actors. And certainly, we rest by your side in case you need some support to reach out to specific actors in your countries, whether it's the development agencies, UNDPs, the UN system as a whole. We're there to help you and try to reach out to those entities. In closing, the Sustainable Funding Guide helps countries to move from aspiration to implementation and from recognizing the importance of geospatial information to making informed, strategic, and funding decisions. I encourage all of us to see this guide not as an end, but as a catalyst for a dialogue, coordination, and try to find solutions to finance geospatial information management sustainably. Thank you very much. I look forward to the discussion and the advice from the experts to see how we can put this guidance into action for supporting all member states in advancing geospatial information management for sustainable development. Thank you so much for all being here.
Thank you, Mr. Guillaume, for these remarks. And it's now my pleasure to invite Ms. Deidre Bishop, the co-chair of the high-level group, the IGIF, and co-chair of the GGIM to deliver her remarks. Deidre, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and greetings, distinguished colleagues and friends. It's a pleasure to welcome you, such a diverse and engaged group of colleagues from across the global geospatial community, to this important webinar today. As co-chair of the high-level group of the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, I'm pleased to be here as we mark an important milestone in our collective work, the release of the Sustainable Funding Guide. When the high-level group convened in 2021, we set out with a clear ambition to strengthen global geospatial information management and support member states in implementing the UN IGIF in a sustainable and strategic way. Very quickly, one issue rose to the surface again and again, across regions, across levels of development, and across institutional contexts. This issue was funding. Not just funding in the short term, but long-term, predictable, and sustainable funding. The kind of funding that allows member states to build, maintain, and continuously improve modern geospatial systems as part of their core national infrastructure. This is why the Sustainable Funding Work Group was established, and why today's webinar is so important. The work group took on one of the most complex and often least understood challenges: how to make the financial case, how to speak the language of finance ministries and budget and treasury officials, how to demonstrate value to decision makers who may not yet fully appreciate the role of geospatial information, and how to show with evidence and real-world examples that geospatial investment is not a luxury, but a necessity for effective governance and national development. Over the last 2 years, the work group gathered insights from member states, documented successful funding models, and analyzed how countries have justified their investments, whether through return on investment, aligning with national priorities, or by clearly articulating the cost of not having reliable geospatial information. All of this work comes together in the Sustainable Funding Guide. It is a practical resource that provides tools, examples, and approaches that member states can use immediately, whether they're preparing a budget submission, engaging senior leadership, or designing a long-term funding strategy. I would like to sincerely thank the Sustainable Funding Work Group, including support from the thematic networks, for their dedication and hard work. In particular, thank you to Mohammed Al-Mabruk and Odette Samayo for your leadership and commitment in bringing this complex piece of work to completion. I would also like to extend special thanks to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. From the very beginning, Dr. Mohammed Al-Sayal stepped forward to lead this work stream. This was a significant investment of time, expertise, and resources, and it reflects a deep recognition of how central sustainable funding is to the success of the UNIGIF. My fellow co-chair, Fernandi Seri, and I are truly grateful for your leadership and partnership. As we celebrate this achievement, we are also looking ahead. The Sustainable Funding Guide will now transition to the United Nations Global Geospatial Knowledge and Innovation Center, which is well positioned to support member states in applying the guidance, sharing experiences, and continuing to refine and expand these tools over time. The high-level group remains fully committed to supporting this work and ensuring it continues to evolve in response to real national needs. This webinar is therefore not just about launching a guide. It's about starting a more informed, more strategic conversation on how we collectively secure the future of geospatial information management. I hope today's session provides practical insights you can take back to your own institutions, and I encourage you to share your experiences moving forward so that we can continue learning from one another. With that, I thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you success for this important webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deidre, for these remarks. And to conclude the opening segment, I now invite Dr. Penduli, the Director of the United Nations Global Geospatial Knowledge and Innovation Center, to share his remarks, including reflection on the future implementation and dissemination of the sustainable funding guide. Dr. Lee,
Okay.
the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much to give me the opportunity to make an opening remark. So firstly, I want to say welcome all the colleagues from the global domain to join this webinar. And a special thanks to our co-chairs, especially our colleagues from Saudi Arabia. And today we call the webinar on sustainable investment. I think it's one type of knowledge, very, very important knowledge. Without the knowledge of geoinformation investment and the returns, we don't know how we can tell the high-ranked leaders to pay more attention on geoinformation. We cannot tell a good story to encourage industry to pay attention and investment in geoinformation. And also, we cannot ask the universities to train more students for our industry. That's why sustainable investment is really the first important question we have to discuss and pay more attention. Because investment, I want to say, as a type of knowledge, I want to say three very simple opinions. The first one, we need a wide-angle vision of investment. Investment is not only money, but it also including facilities, manpower, technology, and even more effort from the top leaders to the communities. That's why we should have a more general thinking of sustainable development. The second one is the return. What's the result of the investment? If the output cannot make the leader happy, make the society happy, with the economy getting growth and good service to disaster risk reductions, that's not a good output. That's why we have to make country demand orientation to make more applications, more returns. The third one, I want to say, pay more attention on geospatial industry. Without the industry, no one will care about the data. We need the data, but who will produce data? Who will make the application for us? Yeah, who will make all the society to be involved? So the industry is also very, very important. And another one, I want to say geospatial culture. We need the society to understand geospatial information, to understand our world, to learn some new things, especially for the trust the AI in the future. So we need a culture of geoinformation. So that's important for our knowledge and also good important foundation for our sustainable development. Because this is the very beginning with our IGF for series of webinars. I wish this one will have a very good beginning and also very best wishes for our discussions and the future work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your remarks. And with this, let me hand it over the floor to Mr. John Mizar, Geospatial Information Officer at the United Nations Global Geospatial Knowledge and Innovation Center, to take over and coordinate further. Once again, thank you for being here. Mr. John, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Mablud, for moderating this first session. It was very interesting also to hear from our high-level speakers, especially how they are supporting this event, the political will from Saudi Arabia, the UN coordination from GGIM, and the high-level group commitment to support the IGF implementation, and also a different perspective from GGKIC about the importance of this guide and how it is going to be disseminated. So, as you have seen on the agenda, we are continuing. I think we are now very eager to see the content of this very important document. Everyone now is asking, is the content, the insight, and how now member states are going to use it. So I would like now to have this opportunity to welcome Mr. Alan Smart to give us content and a presentation about this most awaited sustainable funding guide. So Mr. Alan Smart, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Mr. Wang. I'll just share my screen. There we go. Look, thank you all for inviting me to present here. It's a very, I think, important.
Hello, Mr. Alan. Can you hear me? Mr. Alan? I think there is a small technical problem from his side. Mr. Alan, can you hear us? Okay, I think while we are trying to join to connect with Mr. Alan, I'm trying to bring his presentation. Is this no, not this one. The first one. Mr. D, can you check with Mr. Alan if he's, can you remove this? It's not this one. Can you check with Mr. Alan if everything is okay from his side?
Yep, I'm checking, John. Please proceed.
Okay, I think maybe we come back to this after. I would like now, as you have seen, this webinar is about how to invest, which is more on sustainable funding guide, but also why to invest, which is going to be showcased during the different country case studies. So as we are now waiting for Mr. Alan to come back, I think we are going to go the other way around. And I would like now to invite presenters, to invite Alexi from Rwanda to give us a presentation. So why do we need to have this case study together with this sustainable funding guide? One of the reason is that it's good to have this funding guide. It's good to go to the Ministry of Finance to request for funding for geospatial information. But many member states, many countries, they're having the difficulty to explain very well the return on investment. So the reason we are going to have this case study is to show that when you have investment, when you have finance, now what the country can get, what the benefits the country can get from investing in this geospatial information. So, Alexi, please, can you start with your presentation? This one is from Rwanda, and they are going to show us exactly how they invested in geospatial information, geospatial infrastructure during the land administration in Rwanda, and what has been the return on investment, the different benefit that the country has got from this investment. So, Alexi, please, can you proceed?
Thank you so much. Do you hear me?
Very well.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Alex Tajengwa. I'm the head of land use management and mapping at National Land Authority of Rwanda. First of all, I would like to thank organizers for this webinar and to give us this opportunity to share Rwanda's case study. And I will be sharing about land administration, how Rwanda is transforming its land administration through geospatial innovation. We will focus on unlocking returns on geospatial investment. So now I'm excited to walk through our strategies and challenges and the impact that geospatial enabled land administration has played in Rwanda. Very briefly, we will go through our context as Rwanda, and we will look at challenges, solutions, and also impact that it created locally. So as part of the post-genocide context, Rwanda has been having a lot of land crisis. Most of the the issues was well related to formal documentation, means that land were not registered. So 90% of all countries' land parcels lacked formal documentation. We had also a lot of land-related disputes. About 80% of the civil cases were related to land. There were also gender-related issues. Women were excluded from land ownership rights. We had also issues related to insecure tenure. So there was a limitation related to investment, means the landowners should not, for example, give collateral, their land as a collateral to banks, so that they get loans, they may start investment. So at that time as well, I mean before 2000, there was also technical constraints. We had no surveyors, no formal surveyors. We had also difficulties related to the landscape. The country is very mountainous and very difficult for surveying. There were also no surveying equipments, and even there was limited capacity. So as a government solution, then the government started what we call land reform, for establishing a countrywide land registration system to secure land rights for all Rwandans and enable investment. As the first strategy, the government has adopted a fit-for-purpose methodology. This was really a community-based land registration approach with field demarcation and adjudication. We've also community participation in the map, in the surveying, as well as also using aerial imageries and so forth. So this really, it was very cheap, and also it took a short time versus using conventional approach of surveying. So in a very short time of 4 years, we managed to register about 10.4 million parcels countrywide, and this happened almost in 3 phases. The first phases ranged from 2005 to 2008. It was really a phase to put up policies and laws, as well as a strategic roadmap for systematic land registration. Then from 2009 to 2013, we carried out mass registration countrywide, which really bring up the map and the registry for all the country's land. So then the last phase, it was really about establishing a system, a land administration information system, and also enhancing institutions and capacities. So finally, in 4 years, we invested 70 million USD, and this is something I think cheap compared to conventional approach that we should use. So the funding was from development partners and the government of Rwanda as well. So now let's see the implementation approach, how Rwanda really went through the systematic land registration countrywide. This is, I think, something that many African countries fears to do, but it's something that I think we tested and tried using what we call fit-for-purpose geospatial approach. This approach really was about using the community we had what we call pala surveyors. Those are trained community that helps in surveying, but also we have also elders in the community that can give information about land. So this is, we used also a high resolution photography nationwide that was produced nationwide. And we used also field surveying using community participation. We used as well, we established as well a national, thereafter in 2013, we established what we call a national registry system. We call Land Administration Information System, which has both a textual and geospatial database. Afterwards, we established a course network, a continuous operating course stations, which really helped to improve the accuracy of the results from systematic land registration. Then after we developed the capacities, we buy equipment, we even established surveyors, body of private surveyors. So really the fit for purpose approach, we employed a general boundary approach, which resulted about 85% of accuracy. Then after we decentralized the output, we decentralized the land services to the local level. This, when we consider about the costs that goes for each and every parcel of land. Before systematic land registration, we used about between 1,500 and 2,000 in surveying for one plot. But using fit for purpose approach, each plot was surveyed on between $7 and $10. So this is really a benefit of using fit for purpose approach. As a result and impact, we can say that almost 92% of the country was covered by this systematic land registration, and about more 10 million land titles has been issued. Then we can say that as the impact, it reduced land disputes, it reduced conflict, 80% reduction of land disputes, and most of them were already in courts. Registration of land also helped to increase land value, as well also empowering women, because now women and men, it's a 50% in terms of land ownership. This is maybe also a legal endorsement. So, and also I think the productivity of agriculture has increased because of registration, not only agriculture, but also other sectors. Cities has developed a lot because now the land market has evolved, and the property tax also has been created. Now in Rwanda, the land is taxed and contribute to the country's development. In summary, we can maybe share with you 3 types of benefits. There are benefits related to financial and others related to economic opportunity, as well as impact related to development. Land administration has been developed in that way of having a system countrywide. We can say that now we even recovered all the costs that were used during systematic land registration. Because we now doing what we call transfers. Now, for people who register the land now, who do transaction of land, they pay some fees, they pay property tax. So this is really something as part of return on investment. We can say that also that after registration of land, it helps to immobilize investment, because now Rwanda is open for investors, for foreigners who want to invest in Rwanda. So it's very easy now to mobilize funding and investment countrywide, because now we have tenure security. And it's very easy now to have a collateral, and also registration of land has enabled spatial plans and land markets. So we can say a lot about that, but most importantly, when we compare what we invested in 2008 from 2005 was about 70 million USD. But by now, I think 80% was recovered. And when I estimate between 5 and 6 million is gained every year from land services. I can say that also that as that property tax, transfer duties, transaction fees also contribute to this kind of recovery of the fees. As part of also the impact, the system of land administration is also contributing to other countrywide, to the growth of other systems in the country. I can say that now land administration or registry, our registry is connected to about 14 other systems countrywide. I can maybe note some of them. We have NSDI Hub, which is connected, e-mortgage, accession collection system, and even judiciary system, e-government, a construction permit. Those are other systems that are connected to the land systems, and really the land information system has contributed to their growth and to their sustainability as well. So in brief, we can note that the impact ranges from security of tenure, investment, economic, governance, and even expanding to SDGs. For example, in the SDGs, when I see that after registration of land in Rwanda, we can see that land registration contributed to the indicator 1 of this SDGs, no poverty, because secure land right enabled asset accumulation and credit access. It contributed as well to gender equality, where more than 2 million women gained the ownership through land titling. We can say SDG 10, for example, it reduced inequalities, equal access to affordable land documentation. We can say that also this land registration has also enabled Geospatial, has also contributed to SDG 16, peace and justice, where 18% reduction in land conflict with transparent governance. So zero hunger. So about 25% increase in agriculture. This contributed to reduce the hunger. Economy also SDG 8, SDG 11, and SDG 17. So now, after registration, we have also what we call land use and urban plans, urban master plans. So now, countrywide, we have our cities and our land have spatial plans, which really are resulting from registration of land. So I can say that now going forward, as part of the way forward, we are trying also to leverage IGIF as an important achieve as an important player in the land administration information system as well. I can say that we are trying to develop our country level action plan, and we are also trying to address data maintenance, governance gaps, technology, interoperability, capacity, financial policy, and also standards. So all these we are providing strategies and actions to ensure also IGIF is leveraged in Rwanda. So I think when we evaluate the IGIF, we can say that all the 9 pathways, we are trying to do something across all pathways. For example, in terms of governance, we put in place a National Geospatial Technical Team Committee. We are also trying to strengthen geospatial across all ministries and local governance. And in terms of policy and legal, we are trying also to put in place a geospatial policy and a geospatial law. And we are also trying also to integrate geospatial with all other systems, all other sectors to ensure geospatial is played and impacting all other sectors. I don't want to go through everything here, but the slide shows how geospatial and enabled land administration can help also across 9 pathways. So as the lesson learned for replication, I think fit for purpose is good, and it helps in terms of cost reduction. Secondly, property taxation creates self-sustaining revenue. Legal requirement transform women rights as well. Systematic registration also should be faster and more equitable, engage community participation, ensure legitimacy, and reduce disputes. So as a principle, comprehensive land registration is achievable in a resource-constrained environment when political commitment, appropriate technology, and community participation are used. So Rwanda provide the So I think though we have done that kind of progress, but I can note that there is also some underlying challenges resulting from fit for purpose approach. I can say that boundary accuracy from fit for purpose approach is also being improved, because the accuracy was yes more about 85%, but dispute resolution also are still there. Some of them, they are not, Informal transaction also is another challenge that we have in Rwanda. Capacity constraint is also another challenge, as well as data quality improvement also is also another challenge. So we have also solution. As a solution, we are trying to implement what we call private conveyancing to engage also private sector in our land services. We are trying also to do fee reforms to reduce costs that goes with the land transactions, even with taxation and so forth. We are trying also to integrate other systems, and that creating also dashboards for decision making. And recently we established also dispute management system, and also we are still doing precise surveying to improve the fast transfer post registration. So this is actually part of the solutions that we are trying to implement to ensure sustainability. As lesson learned, I think we can say that with a vision, with political commitment, and with realistic methodology, geospatial enabled land administration is possible. This is maybe my last slide that demonstrates that Rwanda demonstrates that investment in geospatial technology, when it's properly applied through UNIGIF, delivers transformative outcomes with exceptional return on investment. Thank you for your attention. Looking forward maybe for some for discussions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alexi, for this very good entertaining presentation. We can now see very well how Rwanda invested in this geospatial infrastructure, and then what was also the benefits. We've seen that not only you managed to recover the cost that was invested, around 70 million, but also we have seen that how it is now impacting different sectors of life, socio-economic, about access to credits, about women have access to land, about how also the interoperability, which is very important. And we are glad to see that IGIF is playing a big role in updating this. Maybe I know that you still have a lot, and there are a lot of questions also to be asked, and maybe to clarify to other countries how they can go in the same approach. So we come again during the panel, and then you can go deep about how you achieve this. So thank you very much. So yeah, we are continuing now. Now we have one proof, one good case study, which is showing that investing in geospatial information is really is returning a lot of benefits. I would like now to confirm with Alan if he's back, so that this time now we are mixing why and how, because we are still now want to see the insight of this sustainable funding guide.
Julian, John, please continue with the next presentation, please. We are trying to troubleshoot.
Okay. Thank you very much. So now let's continue in the same way of watch. And then we are continuing now. We have seen land administration on country reform. Now we are going now to go to Turkey. Turkey is now going to present the approach, how now they are funding and the return on investment for their geospatial investment. So I would like to welcome them and give Omel and Sem this opportunity to present the Turkey case study. Thank you very much, and you're welcome.
Distinguished colleagues and dear participants, I would like to warmly and respectfully welcome you all on behalf of the Minister of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change of the Republic of Turkey. Today's session is highly important because we are addressing the need for sustainable funding for geospatial infrastructure, together with measurable impact and return on investment. In Turkey, we have established a strong governance and implementation foundation. Within the framework of the presidential decree, the GIS board brings together high-level strategy and financing. We also provide standards-based authoritative data free of charge to a broad and growing user community through our national geospatial platform. For sustainability, under law number 7221, we allocate the licensing revenues we generate to the operation and maintenance of our NSDI. To make the impact more visible, we have also initiated a geospatial tagging approach in budgeted projects. Our presentation will be now delivered by distinguished colleague, Mr. Cem Güllüoğlu. Thank you all for inviting us.
Dear attendees, I would like to greet all you with respect. I'll be making the presentation for Turkey case. I would like to start my presentation with a brief introduction about Turkey. As you are already aware, Turkey is a transcontinental country which is located at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, and it has a population of almost 86 million people, and the GDP per capita as of year 2025 is around 18,000 US dollars. And we, as all developing countries, we are also issuing some challenges, which is disaster vulnerability, as we are prone to earthquakes and some issues regarding climate change. And we also issue some problems caused by rapid urbanization and refugee migration. We also track SDGs and indicators for SDGs by multiple institutions. For example, nationwide coordination and reporting regarding SDGs are carried out by Presidency of Strategy and Budget. And for non-spatial metrics, Turkish Statistical Institute is responsible. And for the geospatial metrics, General Directorate of GIS is responsible with respect to within the scope of the National GIS Strategy, which is also almost more than 90% aligned with the 9 strategic pathways of the IGF. As the General Directorate of GIS, we were established in 2011. What a coincidence, what a nice coincidence that the GGM was also established in 2011. We are especially responsible for establishing and managing the national spatial data infrastructure, and we are also responsible for setting the spatial data standards in Turkey. Almost 2 decades ago, we were issuing some challenges. Actually, the main problem was not the lack of data, spatial data, but it was quite fragmented, and responsibilities and sharing policies were not really efficiently set among institutions. So there was redundancy and lack of governance. Actually, we have a long history of legal framework at our site. For example, in 2011, General Directorate of GIS was established with the Decree Law 644. And after 2 years, the first release of the National Geoportal was released in 2013. Following that date, in 2019, a new governance mechanism was implied by the Presidential Decree Law No. 49. Actually, this is important because this one defines the governance mechanism regarding in the scope of national spatial data infrastructure of Turkey. And in just 1 year later, in 2020, the Law No. 7221, which is a cornerstone for us, that's quite important for our studies, that regulates the collection and sharing policies of geospatial data. And also, there is a licensing and funding mechanism that is regulated by this law. We also have some further studies regarding policy and legal framework, as you can get more info from the slides. I will just jump up to the next slides. Actually, we are defining a hierarchical structure which enables us, we think that enables us ensuring sustainable funding at the higher level. On the top level, there's a three-tier structure actually, and at the top level, there is the GIS Board of Turkey. The GIS Board of Turkey is convened under the chairmanship of the Vice President of the Turkish Republic. And most of the members of this GIS Board, higher level board, are comprised from deputy ministers. There are more than 10 ministries involved in these annual sessions, annual meetings. And the Vice President of the Presidency of Strategy and Budget, and also the Deputy Minister of Finance and Treasury are also members of this board. So that is an advantage for us in terms of geospatial projects when we consider budgets regarding these projects. Because if that project is addressed, if this project is underlined in that GIS board, the funding mechanism is almost automatically eased at other institutions. And in the second level, there is the executive board, and that is mostly comprised from the general director generals of the relevant institutions that deal with geostatistical data. That board makes more than several meetings throughout the year and takes decisions regarding the principles of the implementation of such geospatial projects. The board of the executive, the head of the chairman of the executive board is the Director General of the Geographic Information Systems. There are, on the bottom level, at the technical level, there are several work groups which are quite linked with the national data teams. And these work groups include technical people, technical experts from related institutions, and the rules, standards, and all technical documents which are supplied to the upper boards are prepared at that level. So, as you can see from the slide, there is a three-tiered structure, and it's in a hierarchical manner. Let's move on to the next slide. This is a screenshot of the National Geospatial Data Platform. Actually, there is this is the front end, actually. This is not the NSDA, of course. The NSDA is a broader context, and it also includes regulations, laws, data standards, metadata portal, and also this portal, and also it implies a governance mechanism. So the NSDI is a broader context, and the one on the screenshot on the slide is the front end that is seen, that is used by the geospatial users, and this platform is closely coupled to the e-governance platform of Turkey. I would like to make some attention on the key figures in this slide. For example, for year 2025, the annual operational expenditure for that platform, for that front-end platform, including backend services and security services, actually more than $3 million US dollars was put to make alive that structure, and almost more than $1.5 million US dollars was put made as an expenditure for the personal and other expenses. So to sum up, more than 4.5 million US dollars was put is the cost that we put every year to make this system alive. You also see some other figures, for example, more than 700 total geo layers are served on that platform, and among them, more than 300 of these layers geoservices are certified to be used in official transactions, so we call them authoritative data, and more than 700,000 citizens. And as you see in the table, there are some also public institutions, local governments, universities, and private sectors are also registered to that platform, and they can access all these data sets in a free of charge manner. These are the 32 data teams which are served on the National Geospatial platform. What is special about these 32 data teams is they are all well-defined, the standards are all well-defined, and these documents, these layers, specifications of these layers are open to public via the portal, and collection, production, and sharing of geospatial data included in the geospatial data responsibility metrics are regulated by the law 7221. So the law 7221 promotes free of charge sharing among public institutions based on the National Geospatial Data Sharing Matrix. So this means that, in other words, in practice, data sharing between public institutions of Turkey is free of charge. This law also regulates the geospatial data market, especially the commercial market. So collection, production, sharing, and sale of geospatial data in Turkey within the scope of these 32 data teams are subject to authorization of the ministry. And this authorization is granted by an application. These companies apply to a website, which includes visa applications, and they acquire a license. And that license costs a fee, which is calculated on multiple criteria regarding the scope, period, and scope of the geospatial data. But the key advantage of this funding mechanism, this licensing mechanism, it puts a self-funding practical mechanism for the sustainability of the NSTI of Turkey. For example, last year, this licensing revenue has reached up to $5 million US. And there is a special regulation in the law that says that this revenue may only exclusively be used for activities within the scope of NSTI. So it puts a practical self-funding mechanism so we can keep the NSTI alive by using the commercial activity licensing fee. There are also some other issues. Public institutions, for example, other public institutions can sell their own data, services, or products. This puts a revenue for their infrastructure, and they also get financing from the central state budget so that they can support their geospatial projects. And to be honest, we are not in a position to precisely estimate the return of investment from these geospatial projects. However, with that motivation, we put a methodology on the table and offered a geospatial tag for the projects which are submitted to the general budget. So when an institution offers a project, new project to the general budget, there is a tag and it checks that tag and that project gets identified as a geospatial one, and the projects which are tagged with geospatial are subject to another evaluation process, and in line with the findings of this evaluation, priorities will be set and resources will be efficiently allocated for the GS projects which provide high return of investment. This is my last slide. Actually, I would like to mention on the funding resources of the NSTI. There are several funding resources. The first one is the general budget, which is at the state national level. And there is also licensing revenue, which is realized based on Law 7221, as I mentioned earlier. And there is also institutional contributions. For example, our ministry has a revolving fund, that's called revolving fund, and the funds from the revolving budget may be assigned to the expenses of the NSTI. And there are also some special cases, special projects that are focused on disaster prevention, climate resilience actions, and the budget that is allocated to these such disaster and climate resilience project budgets may be diverted for the investments on National Geospatial Platform and longevity of the NSTI. That's the end of my presentation. Let me let me add just one sentence. Actually, we see the recipe as compliance with the standards, strong governance structure, and sustainable funding. Actually, the technology is not the core problem, is not the principal problem. We need the compliance with standards, strong governance among institutions, and sustainable funding. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this very good presentation. It's very interesting to see how you put different mechanisms in place for funding, but also how your NSDI is self-funding itself, and also you are contributing to local government. I think it's one of the best example, and we'll keep on discussing, and will give us more intel how also other member states can adopt your mechanism. I've seen that there is a lot of things that you put in place, a lot of body, a lot of mechanism in place for self-funding. Thank you very much for your presentation. So now we are continuing in this way. I was told that now Alan Smart is back. We can now continue. We've tested. We've seen how member states are benefiting for investment in geospatial. Now let's try to see exactly now. Now we know what is the benefits, but how now? Let's go back to the Sustainable Funding Guide, which was prepared by Sustainable Funding Working Group to see exactly how every member state can benefit from this one and get the same way as Turkey and Rwanda. So Alan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I suggest maybe the Secretariat might share the slides just because maybe that caused the glitch, but I can talk to them.
Okay. Left, one on the left. Yes, sir. Can you confirm that we can see the slide?
You can see the slides, thank you. If we could go to slide 4.
Slide 4.
So there you share your screen.
Down there. Okay, so we
Actually, if you go to slide 3, because I think that's when I dropped out.
okay. Slide 4.
Slide, slide 4.
Oh.
John, I suggest that you continue in this current mode rather than the presentation, so Alan can speak to it.
Okay.
And then minimize the left-hand side screen so he can work through.
I now can't see it, unfortunately. But if you go to slide 4, I've got notes here. I can't actually see it, but I can just talk to it.
Okay.
We reopen it.
PDF. That one, W4. Yeah. Okay. So can you now confirm?
No, I stopped the screen share.
Are you able to share the screen?
No, we can't see.
Yeah. Okay. Let's check PDF. It looks the technology today is really yeah. That's yeah. Okay, now let's share using PDF while
No, we can. Can you share the screen, Mabruk?
okay, can you share now? Do you see the screen now?
No, I can't, but I can talk to it because I've got it up here on my, hold on, it's coming now. Okay. So just slip down to go down to slide 3 first. Okay, I'll talk to that. Look, I did previously, I don't know where it dropped out, but I think I concluded at the end of slide 3 was that there's a general consensus that funding is tight for mapping organizations in member states. It has, in some cases, it's almost become a funding crisis with competing demands for government services across the board. So this is a real challenge, and that was a very common comment from around the people that we consulted in the preparation for this. So I'm just going to talk now to moving on to external sources of funding from outside the country. So again, the general feeling on external sources is while there are substantial programs there, the general arrangement is somewhat fragmented. Funding sources can include UN organizations, multilateral development banks, official development assistance, non-government organizations or NGOs, and a range of partnerships and innovative funding options. Now, I'll just go through these one by one because this is probably quite an important part of this presentation. UN organizations fund specific programs through specialist agencies, but generally rely on funding from others. For example, the UN Office for Partnerships collaborated with ESRI, the WK Kellogg Foundation, Public Foundation, and the UN Statistics Division to develop the STG data hubs to support the IGIF action plans, and that's continuing. Other programs such as the United Nations Development Programme, the World Food Programme, and the UN Habitat Programme also may include funding that includes funding for geospatial activities, but it's not the central core of what they are seeking to do. Multilateral development banks are quite important in this world. They include organizations such as the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the European Investment Bank, the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, and the Islamic State Development Bank. These organizations offer a range of loans and grants in line with the specific priorities of their member countries. However, in most cases, grants are typically only directed to less developed countries. Examples of engagement include the work that the World Bank did in developing the implementation methodologies for the UN IGIF with the support from the Korean Green Growth Fund. Also, the African Development Bank has funded various geospatial information projects across Africa. For example, the African Disaster Risk Financing Initiative, funded by the African Development Bank, has the overall objective of strengthening the resilience of sub-Saharan African regions to the impacts of natural disasters. And one component of this work clearly is developing risk data for countries. This is a sort of possibility where funding for UN IGIF activities could ultimately arise. The next source of funding is official development assistance, or ODA. It's an important funding option. Example of ODAs include the Japan International Cooperation Agency, the Korean International Cooperation Agency, and the United States Agency for International Development. USAID has in the past pursued a geospatial strategy to guide US efforts in support of the use of geospatial technologies to achieve greater efficiency in their programs. The European Union also provides assistance for the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals, and this is possibly another area that funding sources could be searched for UN IGIF programs. For example, the US Green Deal is primarily a domestic EU program to foster a sustainable circular economy, but it has a component supporting vulnerable countries. The EU, its member states, and the European Investment Bank, for example, announced a commitment of 28 million euros for assistance to developing countries for this purpose in 2022. Another program is the Global Gateway, and this is the EU's international development strategy linked to the Green Deal. It seeks to bring member states together to mobilize the private sector to leverage investment for programs on the Green Deal. The European Fund for Sustainable Development Plus is another source of funding tools under which the Global Gateway aims to mobilize 135 million euros of public and private sector funding towards sustainable development goals. So these programs are worth exploring when considering possibilities for longer-term funding. NGOs, I now turn to non-government organizations, or NGOs. They're active in the geospatial sector. Those that are active include the Gates Foundation, the Nippon Foundation, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and the Public Foundation. Consultations indicated that these funds are looking for business cases for specific investments in UN IGIF activities. Establishing the socio-economic value of such investments is fundamental to attracting their interest. Finally, partnerships. Partnerships promote collaboration and pooling of resources. The example is the SDG Data Alliance that I mentioned before, which is supporting data hubs to help countries pursue sustainable development goals, which includes support for implementing country-level action plans for IGIF. The Korean Green Growth Fund, in partnership for the World Bank, has provided over $98 million for green growth projects, some of which have included investments in geospatial services in countries such as Senegal, Angola, Laos, Colombia, and Mongolia. There can also be partnerships between government agencies within country to support funding. This is quite a common feature in some aspects, such as environmental departments collaborating with mapping agencies to fund development of geospatial data for their purposes. Other arrangements include cost sharing, public-private partnerships, and matching arrangements where parties work together to match funding invested in that could be invested in a UN IGIF activity. Just next slide, please. Slide 5. The next slide, please. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
We are on slide 5.
Slide 5, please. Yeah.
Yeah, we are there. Okay.
It hasn't come up yet.
We are on slide 5.
I can't see it on mine anyway. I'll talk to it. Some of the observations is that there's no single source of funding is likely to be sufficient to provide the sustainable funding required to fund the UN IGIF agenda. There's a need to leverage programs with a wider agenda, such as Sustainable Development Goals, climate change, digital transformation, and poverty reduction. These may be the areas where that might be approached for supporting and helping the UN IGIF program. A hybrid approach could.
Sorry, Alan. What I'll do is I'll share the slides from my end so that way we can try that. Okay,
that's better. That's better, yeah.
Oh, okay. You cannot see.
A hybrid approach could be suitable, combining finance from different sources. For example, you could use donor funding around capacity building and cost sharing and cost sharing partners to fund capital intensive data upgrades and ongoing data custodian arrangements. In the case of this, it's really important that the business cases align with donor priorities. And it is important as well that they include strong economic assessments and evaluations to make the case to investments, to give the donors confidence that their money is going to a valuable cause. Could I go to slide 6, please? Zafar, can you take me to slide 6? Tell me when you're there.
Yeah, I think, Jean, I will share at my end because there's a delay from your end. I'll just share the screen. Yes, Alan, can you see?
Yeah, go to slide 6.
Yes, so it's on slide 6.
Yeah, so chapter 3 addresses actions and items that require dedicated funding. And items that need dedicated funding include upfront capital costs, operating costs, and policy and regulation costs. Capital costs can include IT, for example, capital costs can include IT's hardware and software, storage and communications, data acquisition, and facility support. It may also include digitization of certain topographic and cadastral maps, for example, and it will require from time to time periodic upgrades. Operating costs include wages and salaries, license fees, maintenance, and a range of overheads. There will also be costs associated with policy development and regulation. From our research for this project, capital costs can vary from $5 million to 50 million. Operating costs can vary between 1 million per year to 5 million per year US dollars. And this does not include costs associated with policy formulation, regulation, and training expenses. I think the important point from all of this is that the funding requirements are ongoing. It's not just a one-off exercise, and the concept of sustainable funding is absolutely critical to the UN IGIF agenda. Could I move to slide 7, please? Just want to talk briefly about the benefits. I think it's been confirmed by the discussions that we had for this report, for this project, but other projects that we've done, is that the benefits from the kind of activities that would be covered under the UN IGIF program occur across most areas of government, these days around all areas of industry and society. They can accrue to the custodian of data in terms of lower costs and higher data sales. They can accrue to governments in terms of improved service delivery, productivity improvements, better informed policy and policy analysis, and savings from data sharing. The private sector can benefit from improved productivity, better access to geospatial data, and support for new products and services from geospatial data. Society can benefit in many ways from improved access to services, time saved, improved health outcomes, benefits from improved sustainable development, and ultimately higher standards of living and quality of life. Next slide, please. I guess the observations I'd make here that investment in UN IGIF activities can deliver significant benefits for government, industry, and society. And that's been shown in some of the recent studies that have been undertaken, for example, in Georgia. In addition to upfront capital funding requirements must also include longer-term operating expenses for the curation and renewal of data, as well as ongoing policy, regulation, and training expenses. It is important, therefore, that investment categories are aligned with priorities of funding bodies and that we match the funding bodies' potential services and interests to the aspects of the investment in the digital supply chain. And finally, making the economic case for these investments is absolutely critical. Could I move to slide 9, please? Chapter 4 is about best practice benefit cost analysis. Benefit cost analysis these days follows a standardized series of test steps. A first requirement is to make sure that the objectives of the imposed investment align with the national policies or regional policies and priorities of government. This is a fundamental first step to an effective benefit cost analysis. The second step is to identify the case to be evaluated, and if you like, the counterfactual stage. That's the case where the investment doesn't proceed. It is ultimately the difference in outcomes between the case to be evaluated and the counterfactual that defines the value of and impacts of investments such as in geospatial services. The following steps are relatively straightforward. You need to forecast the costs and benefits that you expect. This can be done from case studies, from research, and from consultations with industries and users of geospatial data. Once the costs and benefits have been forecast, it's important then to develop cash flows and calculate the net present value or benefit cost ratio described in the guide. It is also finally important to identify any benefits that couldn't be quantified in qualitative terms, such as some environmental and societal benefits, to assess the sensitivities, that is, the impact of changes in the assumptions to the outcomes, and then just to select and advise a preferred option. Next slide, please. Assessing the costs and benefits and assessing the impacts these days follows what we call a logic model. There are 4 steps in this model. The first is, we've already discussed, is defining the objective of the investment or activity. The second is defining and describing the inputs, the financial, human, material, and other resources that are needed to implement the investment. Define the activities that will proceed, their timing, their sequencing, and when the benefits are expected to arise. Turn these into outputs, what products and services are going to be delivered. So now you can have products and services delivered, but if they're not adopted or not used, then you don't get an outcome. So the next step is to look at the changes that could be attributable to the outputs that may arise in the short, medium, and longer term. And finally, once you've assessed those outcomes, assess the benefits. That are the increases in welfare associated with the outcomes, and they could be economic, social, environmental, or cultural. In doing this kind of work, it's, I'll just take it back for one more. In doing this kind of work, it's actually important to note that productivity inputs are actually critical for industry and government, and they are very much a part of assessing the impact of geospatial services. There are, however, some non-market intangible benefits, and there are techniques available for valuing and quantifying some non-market benefits, which we'll talk about in the coming slides. Where you can't describe non-market benefits in quantitative terms, it's important to describe them qualitatively. Next slide, please. So the ultimate outcome of this is cash flows, cash flows of benefits, cash flows of capital and operating costs, and then the difference between the benefits and the costs in each year is a net cash flow. And there is we developed a standard template for this, which is available, but there are plenty of other templates, and most economic consulting firms will have, or economic consultants will have, examples of these economic models. These days, they're well accepted and approached for benefit cost analysis. Next slide, please. But these cash flows don't mean anything unless you can bring them back to a common base. And the common base tends to be the net present value of the discounted cash flows. Now, the cash flows are discounted by an opportunity cost of capital or the time value of money. Typically, they can range from 3% to 7%. And you can discount all of these benefits and costs back to a single year, and then you can take the difference and work out the net present value. If the net present value is positive, then the investment is worth undertaking. Or you can express it in terms of benefit cost ratio, which if that is greater than 1, then the benefit is again worth undertaking. There are other metrics as well. You can use internal rates of return, which give you, if you like, a return on investment. There are a few technical issues with the internal rate of return, but it can be used in some stages. But generally, in these kind of investments and this kind of analysis, it's the net present value and the benefit cost ratio that are most interest. So once you report the results, you need to report them in economic and environmental and social terms. Need to test for the assumptions, sensitivity assumptions, and recommend the course of action. Next slide, please. Now, just making some observations here. The first point is that these procedures for undertaking benefit cost analysis are well established, as are the processes for assessing market and non-market impacts. There are now many studies available, including case studies of the impact of geospatial information that can help guide and assess the benefits and costs and lower the costs of assembling the impacts through what has been called sometimes a benefits transfer arrangement. But you can look at the studies in comparable that are relevant to your country. You can then do consultations and analysis in your country, and they help you focus down very quickly on what the benefits are, say, in agriculture or in tourism or in mining or in health management. There are examples of many sites now that include relevant studies, including the GeoVSI database of socioeconomic evaluations, which includes a UN IGIS study inventory. There is the very useful EVRY database of environmental data that is hosted at the moment in Canada. There's a UK ENCA database, which is used for estimating the value of natural capital, often an important item when you're trying to look at sustainable development. And of course, the World Bank has guidelines for the evaluation of sustainable development can be very helpful in assessing these benefits. Next slide, please. Chapter 5 goes into more detail in evaluating benefit costs. And when we look at this, I think it's important to stand back for a minute, particularly with geospatial data, and say, what is the context of value? What is value creation? And in general, and this is some work that was written many years ago now by Young MD, is that we have use values and non-use values. The use values tend to break down into 3 components. Direct use value, which is what we normally look at in this context, that is the increases in output or the reduction in costs, the improvements in productivity in production across the economy, or in improvements in productivity in government services. The second is the ecological value function, which can be things such as flood control measures, improved water resources, improved natural resource management, etc. And there are many option values as well, which are related more to sustainable development and providing communities with options to take advantage of future value from, say, such things as sustainable development, improved biosecurity, etc. Non-use values are not really used in these studies, but they're important sometimes to take into account that there are values in, for example, bequest values, where you're leaving and preserving the natural environment for future generations, or for preserving environmental and conservation values for people to enjoy, but they may not necessarily use. Most of the studies that we've been looking at and that I've been looking at over the years are practically more in the use of direct use and ecological value functions, but sometimes option values can be used to assess, because you can estimate or use, there are techniques to evaluate the value of an option, but it's a very expensive process, and really in this world it's not justified, in my opinion. So fundamentally, the methodologies that are used divide into market impacts and non-market impacts. Market impacts are the easiest to evaluate because there is a price and a quantity, so you can estimate productivity impacts, or you can estimate the value to consumers or the value to producers, sometimes called consumer and producer surplus, or you can use defensive expenditure or substitute cost methods, such as using the cost of natural disasters and the impact of geospatial information in reducing those costs. So it's like a substitute cost approach to assessing the value of such services in reducing the impact of natural disasters. Non-market impacts are much more complicated, but there are techniques for evaluating non-market methods. They break down generally into revealed preference approaches and stated preference approaches. Revealed preference approaches are economic methods for valuing non-market goods, such as clean air or biodiversity, by observing people's actual behavior in real markets, rather than asking them directly what they are willing to pay. Hedonic pricing is an economic value method used to estimate how different attributes of a good or a service contribute to its market price. A very easy example of hedonic pricing is looking at, say, 2 houses, one which has a wonderful view of a mountain or an ocean, and one which doesn't. If you can look at the difference in sale prices of those 2 houses, you can work out the value of the view, or you work out the value of the environment. Stated preference methods are based on surveys of consumers, usually willingness to pay for a good or a service. So you could have willingness to pay surveys or choice experiments to try and estimate what the value to consumers are of a service or a service improvement. Choice experiments are a survey-based economic valuation method used to understand how people value different attributes of a good, service, or policy. They require quite a bit of expertise to run, and they can be expensive. But commonly, stated preference, particularly willingness to pay services for goods or services that have been used in the past. In fact, we have used them in the past for estimating the value of services provided by one of our mapping authorities. In short, though, these studies can be very expensive. And for this reason, analysts are increasingly turning to examining existing studies for estimates of non-market imports. You can then use this concept of benefits transfer to lower the cost of assessing the value of these non-market benefits. And this is very important when you consider now the number of studies. And even, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to see the Turkey presentation, but the sorts of studies that organizations are now doing provides great insights into the benefits that might happen in another member country. You have to work out whether it's appropriate or not, but there are techniques for doing that. In conclusion, next slide, please. Thanks. Experience suggests that the benefits from action under the UNGIF are positive, but domestic funding sources are competing with other government priorities. And in a sense, there is a funding crisis. No single source of funding is likely to be sufficient for long-term sustainable funding model. Financing IGIF activities will require a flexible approach across different sources of funding, as many as possible. The guide maps out what is involved in undertaking a benefit cost analysis and provides information on how economists estimate market and non-market impacts. As I mentioned before, there are numerous studies now that can provide evidence of the net impacts of investment in geospatial services. Assembling studies that are relevant to specific member countries will become in future an important part of the evaluation process. In short, countries will need strong business cases to convey the socio-economic benefits of activities under the IGIF program when it's approaching potential funder sources and donors. We may need training and templates to help agencies establish socio-economic value and develop their business cases. But the intention of this funding guide was to provide the information that practitioners can use that specialists can use when they're talking, say, to finance departments. If they come up with a concept such as contingent valuation or revealed preference, the funding guide, they can go into the funding guide and they can get information on what that means. So I'm hoping that it will help the dialogue between the economists and the scientists and the managers of geospatial systems in promoting the progress to find sustainable funding for the UN IGIF agenda. I'd just like to finally say that there is a 2-page summary of all of this, which has been produced by the working group. This is just a snapshot of it. And I'd encourage you to grab a copy of that when you are in dialogue with others and talking about the value of IGIF, UN IGIF and geospatial services generally. It may help in encouraging that dialogue. Finally, that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank GEOSA and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for supporting me in developing this work. And thank you for your attention. And I wish you well in the future in pursuing this agenda.
Thank you very much. Very good and actionable framework that you presented. Now, cover necessary needs for member states, what they need in terms of knowing what is available for funding resources or actionable activities that are required for funding, how they can do the economic impact assessment, but also how they can evaluate the impact of geospatial information and different techniques which they can use. It's a very complete document and very complete in NRGF implementation, and which is going really to help member state in reviewing the financial problem that they were facing. So I think we still have time together. You will be also part of the panel. Maybe if some member state more ask you will be there to clarify them. Just to clarify to attendees that this presentation, the sustainable funding guide, the flyer that was mentioned, will all be shared to make sure that the member state have access to them. The last presentation presenting a case of Chongqing, China. We've seen how the member state can access to funding guide. We've seen those who are good finance, how they use it in the land administration. We have seen how Turkey is also benefiting in terms of different mechanisms for funding. Now let's go now to the city level, where we are going to see how in the urban planning and the geospatial technology are being used in Chongqing. So please, May, you have the floor. Just quickly let you know that we are running a lot of time. If you can do this one in less than 10 minutes, we'll be very grateful. So May, can you hear? Hello, May? We cannot hear you. I think there is a problem of sound. May.
Can you hear? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, May.
Can you?
Yeah, now you can hear me.
Okay.
Okay. Distinguished experts, ladies and gentlemen, good day or night. My name is Mei Xue. Today, I'm very happy to introduce the financial model of Digital Chongqing Geospatial Information System, which is a part of our UN IGRF practice. First, let me give a brief overview of Chongqing. As a megacity nestled in mountains and rivers, we face unique challenges such as complex terrain, frequent natural disasters, and the imperative to bridge urban-rural development gaps. Like many cities across the globe, especially those in the global south, Chongqing once grappled with formidable financing and investment hurdles. Today, I aim to address the core question: why should we invest in the geospatial information industry, and what returns can we expect? Our answer, proven through practice, is clear. Geospatial information is not a cost. It is a valuable core asset. Strategic investment in it delivers real, measurable returns across 4 key areas. The first one is better governance. The second one is fair society. The third one is strong economy. And the fourth is healthy environment. To get these returns, we built a smart funding system. It has 3 clear parts. Initiative 1 is to secure stable funding for foundational work. Basic surveying and mapping has been incorporated into the government's 5-year financial plan, securing regular and reliable funding. This ensures the timelines and continuous update of our core geospatial data resources. Usually $10 million invested in core data resources each year. These fundamental layers are shared by every department and county of the municipal. Initiative 2 is to eliminate funding wastage in specialized projects. For thematic data and applications, we have established a rigorous project review mechanism, requiring all departments to address 2 critical preliminary questions. Is the project truly necessary? Can duplicate construction be avoided? This review first, implementation later approach cuts substantial financial and resource waste from the outset. And the initiative 3 is to deepen government and enterprise collaborative partnership. In emerging fields such as connected smart vehicles and drone services, we adopt a government and enterprise cooperation model. The government provides authorized geospatial data. Enterprises need service development and operation, and all parties share the resulting benefits. This model maximizes the value of public data and fully unleashes the innovation vitality of the market. Let me share how this investment translates into real-world benefits. The return one is better governance, lower cost. In disaster prevention, we monitor over 15,000 potential hazard spots. We use satellites, drones, and AI. The result, emergency meeting times dropped from half a day to just 1 hour. We have fewer losses of life and property. This directly supports SDGs on resilient cities and climate action. In community management, we built digital 3D maps for all 1,031 neighborhoods. For example, our AI digital grid manager helps local workers. Their daily inspection time fell from 2 hours to 30 minutes. They now solve 3 times more problems. Technology investment here directly improves human efficiency. Return 2 is a more fair and inclusive society. For supporting the elderly, we created an online platform for installing elevators in old apartments. The process from gathering opinions to managing construction is transparent and online. The return is we built 1,438 new elevators, and LD residents can now move easily and safely. This aligns with goals for sustainable urban transport. For empowering rural areas, we built digital maps for remote villages. These maps integrate data on farms, resources, and aid programs. And this map leads to better and data-driven decisions for rural development, and also helps narrow the urban and rural gap and supports goals to reduce poverty. Return 3 is a stronger and more innovative economy. For smarter infrastructure planning, For example, for a new 165-kilometer highway, we used high-precision 3D maps. We analyzed bridge tunnel ratios and geological risks, and this leads to an optimized, safer route with lower long-term cost. This is sustainable infrastructure. For efficient land management, our digital platform tracks municipal land reserves. It identifies problems like unclear ownership or delayed demolition quickly. The result is faster problem solving and more efficient use of urban land. For growing new industries, through securing land sandbox, we opened desensitized geospatial data to enterprises, spawning a host of new industries and businesses formats, such as high-precision mapping and spatial analysis. This has attracted a large number of high-tech enterprises to cluster in Chongqing, forming a positive development cycle of co-built ecosystem, shared value, and continuously fueling innovation vitality. Return 4 is a healthier and more resilient environment. We act on climate goals and developed a dynamic platform to measure and monitor carbon emission. It uses geospatial data and IoT. The result is precise tools for tracking forest carbon sinks and industrial emissions. This makes ecological value measurable and supports global climate action. So Chongqing's practice, I think, by investing strategically in geospatial information, guided by the IGIF framework, we achieve multi-dimensional returns. We believe three things are essential. The first is the mind change. We must see geographic data as a core asset, not a consumable cost. This is the key to unlocking its value. Second is strong institutional systems, high-level coordinated leadership, and the data sharing mechanism of one data source, one connection shared by multiple parties are crucial, serving as an institutional foundation for ensuring investment efficiency and eliminate resource waste. The third is a clear pathway, the cycle of better governance, a more inclusive society, a stronger economy, a resilient environment creates a powerful return on investment loop. Each step directly supports the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Finally, we are pleased to share this mountain river city solution with the world, especially as a replicable model for cities in the global south facing similar challenges. We firmly believe that wise investment in geospatial information is one of the smartest choices we can make. It is essential for building a safer, fair, resilient, and sustainable future for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. May, for this very good presentation, showing exactly how you embed different special investment, judging, and different benefits also in different sectors that are really a very good case for this mega city of Chongqing, and we are glad to see that you are sharing it with Adam, and then probably they will learn a lot from your side. So Now we are finishing the third part of this webinar. I thank very much the presenters, Alexi from Rwanda, Omel and from Turkey, and May from China. We're covering different aspects, land administration, how Turkey is putting in place different structure. How also China is using geospatial information for megacities, different level, national, but also the city level. So we now going to go deep. After that very also interesting presentation from the Sustainable Funding Guide. Now it's time to where they can go deep about how they did their achievement that we have seen there, but also you can also ask different questions to them. So I would like now to hand over to Dr. Zafal for this part of the session, and then we come after the session. So Mr. Zafal, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good day, Assalamu alaikum, ni hao, salamat datang, swadika, and many more greetings. It's my great privilege to invite you all to this very important discussion of the panel, which comprises of the former speakers, but also I have esteemed panelists who are also part of the development of the funding guide. So in the panel, I have Ms. Mimi from South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Hamad from UAE, and also we have Mr. Stephen Klippel. Are you there, Stephen? From the Public Foundation, which is a donor agency. And these experts participated as part of the, thank you, Stephen, for raising your hands, and you are here, thank you very much, participated in the consultations of the funding guide. But also, Ms. Mimi was also one of the former co-chairs of the working group. Thank you, Mimi, for your contributions. So I will try to keep this panel very sharp, as well as like to hear more from the experts. And also there is in the Q&A, folks can put in their questions, and then I will try to ask the panelists from there. First, I'd like to invite Ms. Mimi, given her involvement, how does Africa benefit from the Sustainable Funding Guide? Especially we heard models about revolving fund and different models presented by Alan. So maybe from your perspective, how can we benefit from this guide?
Thank you, Dr. Zafar, the facilitator. I think greetings to all. Maybe let me start by appreciating the organizers of this webinar, the UNGGKIC, also supported by the UNGGM Secretariat, the high-level group, the co-chairs, the Sustainable Funding Working Group, the co-chairs, the members of the working group, and also appreciate the support from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in terms of funding this work. And also thank everyone who contributed. This is great work. I think from African perspective and also leading the work of the working group on IGIF for the UNGGM Africa, we really appreciate this work. Before this guide, finding information on funding models and resources for SDI implementation or UNIGF implementation was very difficult. In fact, it was nearly impossible. We therefore appreciate the work done. And from the African region, it is common knowledge that many of the countries that are struggling and continue to struggle in the implementation of the SDI are from developing nations and in Africa. We all know the reasons why these countries are struggling, and literature has documented this body of knowledge very well, mostly attributed to lack of political buy-in, lack of leadership support. And we know that the lack of this very important elements will definitely lead to lack of funding and lack of implementation in terms of the IGIF. So today, the launch of this guide gives us hope. For us, it's a real lifeline, especially for developing countries. And we look forward to the implementation of this guide. We also remember that this is the first step and it's just a guide. And we need to use it and to implement it to realize its benefit. And we are looking forward to start working in terms of priority SDI projects that are aligned to development goals like the National Development Plan, the Africa 2063 Agenda, and the SDGs. Now, in terms of these models that were presented, we appreciate all this information coming because of we have been struggling to implement our SDI and IGIF, one because of funding and competing priorities. So these models provide some kind of framework that we can follow as African nations to start prioritizing and presenting funding as a means to meet policy goals, not just as a technical exercise. We understand the need to engage our political leaders in a strategic way, and we understand to also understand what the funders are requiring. We know that the political leadership might be looking at socio-economic impact, and the funders looking for strong business case that is bankable, that can guarantee in investment can guarantee return on investment. So we also appreciate what Alan has presented as well, that is in the guide, in terms of how to measure the value or value the cost and benefits of geospatial information management. So this is very handy because as countries, and I want to mention South Africa as an example, that we have been on this journey for quite some time in trying to measure the value of geospatial information and its services and to understand its contribution to our GDP. And this is very important initiative because now, until we get that figure and that number, it will always be difficult to justify. We thank the writers of the guide because now there are formulas, there are guidelines in terms of how to go about measuring this value and also as to get that golden number, because it is through that golden number that we'll be able to be sustain the implementation of the IGIF. So there are a number of models that are there and we appreciate, but ultimately, for Africa and for South Africa, the aim is to look at long-term financial models that are public-private partnerships and integration into national budgets, because those are sustainable. And not the short-term financing for projects, because once a project is completed, it will be difficult to sustain and maintain the momentum. I thank you.
Thank you. Very well said and well articulated around the different models. Thanks for summarizing the contents as well. Obviously, we need one or more models in order to keep the sustainable funding going across. I'd like to ask His Excellency Engineer Hamad Al-Khawi, from Arab states, because you come from UAE and obviously you're going to have a meeting of the Arab states plenary next week in Tunisia. How do you see this guide benefiting the Arab states, because you have varied sort of economics within the Arab states region, but also can you articulate, because you were talking about your finance models in UAE, can you throw some light on how this could be utilized for the Arab states community?
Well, Dr. Dhafar, first of all, I thank you and your team for this invitation. And it's an honor to be among your panelists and to these discussions and to share with you how we have looked into the guide and how we can utilize and get the benefit out of it. And allow me also to thank the team who are working, the Sustainable Funding Working Group teams, who have made this one to be in our hand, and also to thanks the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the GUSA, for their support to finalize this guideline, which I believe it is very important for us and for most of the other countries. Basically, to come back to your questions, I mean, how as Arab states can get the benefit out of this this guide, actually. When we look into the guide helps government understand that geospatial information is not a cost, but an investment that supports the economy and public services. Also, it provides a clear way to explain why funding is needed and what outcomes will be achieved in a language decision makers that can understand. It opens new funding options. When you look to the guide, there are a multi-method that have been demonstrated into the guide that country they might follow, and they might look into what they can be suit them based on their regulators and the system that they are working on. So it goes beyond government budget by encouraging public-private partnership and cost sharing between government entities. Also, the guide, it helps government entities work together instead of repeating the same project and spending a duplicate amount of money and doing the same project by different entities. Also, I mean, I can say that the guide, it can support us because it moves countries from short-term project to long-term sustainable funding. So to summarize all of this, I would like to say that the guide help Arab countries and help most of the countries all over the world fund the geospatial sector in a smart, sustainable, and an impact-driven way. And if you will allow me to share with you some of the experience or some of the method that we are applying here in United Arab Emirates as one of the Arab state countries and leading in economic perspective, at the Federal Geographic Information Center, which acting as the main reference entities at the national levels, we have adopted several approaches to ensure sustainable funding for our geospatial sectors. First of all, we have moved from project-based funding to institutional funding by securing an annual government budget. This budget is used to implement geospatial projects within a strategic plan aligned with the country national priorities and directions. And the second approach is the establishment of shared funding mechanism among government entities. This mechanism or this approach aiming to distribute cost among beneficiaries instead of duplicating data production. A key national example into this approach is to establish, recently we have established and unified the geodetic reference framework. When we look into this project from the beginning, the initial cost of this project, it was almost 50,000 million. So we're talking about 200 million in our currency dirhams. So this cost of project, it has been decreased to 85%. So we have achieved to unify our geodetic reference framework from 200,000 million to almost 20 million only. And that's by sharing the cost among all of the 7 emirates by getting the benefit out of their infrastructures that they already established a long time ago. So this is a really good example that data sharing or sharing the cost, it can be a beneficiary for everyone, and it can sustain our funding, and it can save our budget. The third approach, which I believe this is one of the most approach for me. I'm always following this approach because I found it's really worth it and it's really interesting. It's which I personally apply is strategic engagement with decision makers by using the language of economic and value rather than technical language, and by highlighting the role and impact of geospatial information on the country day-to-day decision making. So by showing the value of geospatial in a different sectors and by showing the impact of this value, it can play a big role and sustain the funding, because you are ensuring to the decision makers that this geospatial information, it is an essential for merely most of the sector at the national levels. We talk about climate, we talk about the environment, talking about national development. So you have to show cases to the decision makers, which I believe, from my point of perspective, it's very important, and it can gain a lot of support in terms of sustain our funding. Finally, it is really important to note that all of these approaches are clearly explained and documented in the guidance document that we have in our hand today. So thanks again for the team who have worked behind all of this. Thanks for GeoSA for supporting the funding of this one, and I wish that we will take this guide to the next level. So thank you very much, Dr. Dhafar.
Thank you for sharing the practical approach, Engineer Hamid, because I think these stories motivate. I think I'm seeing the chat, which a lot of people are acknowledging about the financial barriers, but also how models can work. Cost sharing is definitely one thing that we could learn. I'd like to now call upon Stephen Kippel, who's the CEO of Public Foundation. Stefan, you have been involved in supporting the SDG Alliance and also action plans. And thank you for your contribution and inputs during the interviews of this guide preparation. How do you see, especially from a donor agency, when an application for geospatial comes across, and how do you react, or what do you see that convinces you to fund the action plan from a donor agency perspective? What are your motivators?
Sure. And I guess I'll start by sharing that on public also, often we're also raising funds for these projects. So in some cases, we do serve as an intermediary where we identify, yes, projects and connect funding to them. And that's actually how the work was started with the SDG Data Alliance and the SIDS Global Data Hub, which I can share a little bit about here. But I do want to start by acknowledging the importance of the UN-IGIF Sustainable Funding Guide. I think we see it not only as a technical framework, but also as a critical bridge between geospatial communities and the policymakers and finance ministries who ultimately sustain these investments. So from public's experience, sustaining geospatial investment, targeting resources to projects, it's not about, finding a single funding source. It's about designing systems that continue to attract funding and investment because they generate visible, trusted public value. So yes, over the past several years, public has helped to build and scale initiatives like the SDG Data Alliance, also the SIDS Global Data Hub, which has come out of the work of the Data Alliance. We work with governments, philanthropies, private sector partners like ESRI and FUGRO and many others, and then UN agencies like the UN Statistics Division and UN GGIM. These platforms, rather than single sources of funding, were intentionally designed to address the two gaps that have been highlighted today, the financing gap and the evidence gap. So one key lesson that we see is this: funding for geospatial or geospatial investments become sustainable when their outputs are tangible, public-facing, and usable beyond technical experts. Often we see that geospatial funding focuses on back-end capacity that remains largely invisible to decision makers. What has helped unlock and sustain funding in our work has been pairing that capacity, which is important, but pairing it with clear, concrete deliverables, things like open data hubs, dashboards, country portfolio maps, things that policymakers, donors, and the public can actually see and use. So when a minister or a donor can visualize climate risk, infrastructure gaps, development investments on a map or a dashboard, the return on investment becomes intuitive. So you don't just explain the value of geospatial data, you can show it. I think a second lesson we diversified funding models, right? This is kind of where Public Foundation sits. None of the platforms that we built have been built on a single grant. Instead, we've combined our resources, additional philanthropic capital, public sector partnerships, and private sector engagement. So, philanthropy can play and does play a catalytic role by absorbing some early risk and supporting innovation. But public sector partnerships anchor legitimacy and national ownership. And the private sector can bring scale, technical capacity, innovation, technology, and long-term sustainability, which can reduce costs while increasing resilience, because these programs do need to become sustainable over time. Importantly, we've seen the strongest private sector engagement when these platforms are open, credible, and widely adopted. Funders, donors, like ourselves and others, want to see these tools used for public benefit. So trusted geospatial ecosystems, they can create markets and long-term value, not just short-term projects. A third lesson is that sustaining investment requires speaking the language of finance and policy. Finance ministries do not fund geospatial systems, they fund outcomes. So resilience, efficiency, growth, and risk reductions. The same can be said for philanthropy and private sector donors. So we see tools like data dashboards, country portfolio maps, and sector-specific use cases help translate geospatial capability into economic and development returns. This is where the funding guide, I think, is especially important. It helps connect the why of geospatial investment to the how of sustaining financing through clear ROI logic. So to wrap up a bit, sustainability, in our view, is not only about funding, it's also about trust, governance, and relevance. We have seen platforms like the Data Alliance endure when countries see themselves reflected in the platforms, when the data is accessible and credible, and when institutions feel ownership rather than dependency. That is key for us. Funding partners, technology partners need to be seen as partners, right? Not as just donors. I think the UN IGIF provides the strategic architecture for all of this. Initiatives like the SDG Data Alliance and the SIDS Global Data Hub aim to operationalize it, turning principles into platforms and platforms into everyday decision-making tools. So yeah, to close, I would say, sustaining funding and geospatial investment comes down to three key things. One, visible and usable outputs that demonstrate the value, diverse partnerships that blend public, private, and philanthropic financing, and then finally, clear evidence of a return on investment, communicated in the language of decision makers. We've heard a lot about that today. So I think if we do this well, geospatial information becomes not a cost, but a multiplier for sustainable development. So I hope that provides some background and answer some of your questions. Thank you.
Beautifully said, Stefan. It's a multiplier, it's not a cost, but also remember that finance ministry don't fund the infrastructure, they fund the outcome out of geospatial. Very key things to remember. Thank you very much. And also I'd like to thank, on behalf of all the UN community and geospatial community, for the interest that the foundation has put across and has been continuously supporting this. Thank you so much. I'd like to now go back to our speakers who really eloquently presented their case studies. I'd like to thank all the three speakers today. I'd like to go to Ms. May first. Now we have heard about the sustainable funding guide, and you articulated the challenges, especially the disasters and also the expansion. How do you intend to use this funding guide, given that you have done certain models and you have heard from Alan Smart? What are your reflections, madam?
Thank you. I think here are three things I can learn from the guide. The first one is multiple investing sources are necessary. Right now, Chongqing's funding system is basically from government. We have to find more investing sources from this to support this system. This is the first lesson. The second lesson is the evaluation of return is necessary. We have to measure the return of the system, and not just by defining the return, but also to measure it into how much money we have the return is. And this is very important for us to prove the necessity of this investment, I think. The third lesson I'm thinking about is how to embed the geoinformation innovation into the updated basic infrastructures, such as the AI model infrastructures in our city, to get more and more investment and more support, and to make this system more sustainable. Above are the three lessons I learned from the guide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now to move on to Mr. Umar Allen from Turkey, revolving financial model. That was something new I learned from your presentation. And also I like the way the license revenue that come through is reinvested in the spatial data infrastructure. How do you see as the guide? Now you've heard from Alan, and again, these sort of models and case studies are very important to motivate. How do you see now these models being explained? And you've heard from donor agencies and also the different cost sharing aspects. How do you reflect, sir?
Okay, thank you very much for your asking. We have up to now focused on qualitative benefits rather than quantitative benefits in projects related to spatial data infrastructure and data production. So maybe my colleagues will continue about your question.
Thank you, dear General Director. I will make some amendments on my General Director's comments. Actually, let me start explaining by the revolving fund structure. In short, revolving fund structure is a special budget which is managed by the ministry itself, and the main sources of that revolving budget revenue is comprised from the activities that is carried by the ministry itself. For example, when the ministry sells a service or a data or a product that is registered as an income to the spatial budget of the ministry. And of course, there is a process and there are some provisions that need to be taken from the Mr. Minister, and upon approval, you can direct that fund to specific projects, and this budget is isolated from the central state budget. So it is an auxiliary backup budget for some cases. And regarding the sustainable funding guides that is released a while ago, we take this report funding guide as a valuable reference to strengthen the long-term financing and governance of geographic information management activities. And in line with the guide's key message, which we are already aware, services are fundamental, geospatial services are fundamental elements for a modern economy. And Turkey up to now has positioned geospatial information services as a critical infrastructure that underpins planning, development, and evidence-based decision-making processes. Actually, the funding guide highlights that many investments in that's made in geospatial projects can generate strong socio-economical returns and substantially higher maybe public value. And in the report, we see that return of investment ratio in such projects are estimated as 1:3 or 1:4, which is quite promising actually for the investors. And we believe that, but on the other side, we believe that rather than measuring this in that quantitative manner, as the government, as the state itself, as the ministry, we believe that public benefits ratio is much more than that ratio, since it's a public service which is invaluable to be estimated. However, we take this guide as a reference document, and there are defined methodologies, some specific methodologies to better estimate the return of investment in terms of quantitative approach. We will refer these methods, and maybe we can blend these methodologies, as I have mentioned in our previous presentation. We now added a geotag for the projects in terms of geospatial projects, which are submitted to the general budget. We can perhaps make the measurement strategy quantitative measurement strategy with reference with the findings of this document. So that's a document we will refer when assessing the efficiency of the geospatial projects, which are tagged as geographic projects that are presented to the general budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. I think one thing we learned from that is, apart from the finance, it's around it's the governance and the policy backing to use such funds and work through. And also thank you for using this as a reference, but also hopefully in a year's time, we will compile the usage of the guide, and probably we meet here as a community and talk about more how things have changed and share those experience. I'd like to now move on to Mr. Alexis, who really made a very impressive presentation about how the land administration and the funding models were done. So Alexis, your reflections of, you've heard our colleagues, you've heard about the guide. What would you do differently now?
Thanks so much. I think the guide is very important. To have it in place is crucial for Rwanda and even for other countries, because it provides a practical guidance on financing of geospatial services in a sustainable way. And the guide also, it demonstrates the value, at least the value of geospatial to our readers, and it provides also funding strategies. It's most importantly encourages long-term planning. I like the way that the guide also really teaches how to reduce reliance on external funding, because I think external funding is an issue worldwide. And maybe as Rwandans, we learn that we can use limited budget and maximize internal generated revenues and do something in terms of geospatial. And also I learned that not only financing are missing, but also we have to use our local technical capacities, maximize the capacities of our home capacities, but also employ using homegrown solutions, because some of the time, especially in Africa and in other countries, there is that culture of that everything is about using money, but also there is capacities within government, within the private sector that can be used and impact and develop geospatial services. And what I can also learn is that to use technology. To use technology is also a mean to reduce costs. We shared the way that if Rwanda adopted to use kind of conventional approach of geospatial with high equipment, with using high companies, and also it would take 25 years. But we did it in 4 years because of using an unconventional approach. Homegrown solution, using the community, using the government capacities to undertake some services. I think there is also a way of pooling resources through coordinated institutions. Institutions can put effort together, can put limited resources together, and also develop geospatial together. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said, Alex. I think we are in the age of data sovereignty, having some indigenous capability and sovereign capabilities. And you highlighted that, sometimes answers are within and how do we think differently? And I'm enlightened by the way you have kind of reflected on the guide. Thank you so much. I just like to always finish things on time and work through. Alan, very quick intervention from you. You have heard the member states speak, and you have also got the comments in the chat. Very quick reflection, 1 minute. What is your message on next steps of using the guide?
Well, thank you, Zafar. I'm very interested to hear that feedback and that some of the points in that guide are resonating. I think the next steps may well be some form of further training and templates to help people do it. I mean, this guide will help people talk to the finance departments, but we might, to lower the cost of it, it would be useful to have some templates and maybe some training, even if it's online training that's on a video, to walk people through some of the more details, because it's a very big area. I can only touch on little bits of it. It's a very deep pool to draw in, and some people want to dive into those pools.
Thanks, Alan. That's an excellent suggestion. Engineer Hamid, quick intervention from you. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Thanks to Alan. I think if you allow me to give one more suggestion, I believe now we should work more in answering why rather than how. I totally agree with Stephen, because if we look to the guide provides insight in how to secure funding for geospatial sector in a country and the different model and mechanism that can be undertaken to do that. But however, the most important question is why? Why should these organizations secure these funds? Why should government secure the funding for our geospatial sectors? In this respect, the guide provides ways to conduct studies to demonstrate the importance of the geospatial data of these organizations and the different factors that should be accounted for in these studies. But I believe what would be helpful is to complement this important work by a structured inventory of real use cases and how they show the importance of the geospatial sector through figures illustrating the financial impact on the different sectors. This can be done simply by collecting every and each study report that were conducted by different countries. We have seen so many countries, they do have a successful story, successful case study. So it is really important, Dr. Zafar, to work in why. Why should government take care of this sector? We should show cases, real cases to our decision makers. What will happen if we don't have a maintained geospatial data? What will happen quality data, a clean data that can be used. Why we quite often heard people talking about implementation of autonomous vehicles? Why no one is talking about the most important component to make this autonomous vehicle to be implemented on the ground, which is high definition maps, which is precision location? Why we don't hear those kind of discussions happening among our geospatial experts? So I believe it is the time to show some use cases, real use cases. It's not just about talking about it, real use cases to show the importance of geospatial information. And without it, we cannot reach anywhere. We cannot develop, we cannot secure peoples, we cannot maintain our public good. So, and thank you very much for excuse me for the time consumed.
No, thank you very much. No, I think that gives some ideas, and that nicely gets into the next presentation that John will talk about how this funding guide, the use case, the training, the templates, so the why could be answered. I'd like to now conclude this panel. One thing I'd like to say here is I learned it's an African proverb where you say, if you want to walk short distance, you walk alone. If you want to walk long distance, you go with a group. And I think we all have accumulated here as a group, and we all together can come back in another 1 year's time, John, and reflect upon what we have achieved and share stories and get better. And one thing that is very, very important is geospatial is a critical infrastructure of the nation, like power lines, water, communications. And I think that combined message that comes along can really help move forward for sustainable financing. I'd like to thank all of you for your participations and the panel members for your valuable time. When we started this, there were about 160 people. We have now got 137. So still, it's quite interesting. And now I'd like to hand over to Jean. Thank you very much. And Jean, over to you.
Thank you very much, Zafal, for this very good panel discussion. I think it was getting more and more interesting, but unfortunately we need to cross because time is not on our side. So it was really interesting to see how they share different perspectives, how this guide now, which was launched, is going to be very helpful in the upcoming activities. So how also they are going to help to resolve the kind of problem they are facing, especially the financing, which was a big issue. So thank you very much, and all the panelists for their participation. So as it was mentioned many times, we need to understand now what is the next step for this very important document. As you mentioned, it was handed over to DGKIC, but we are not going to keep it in our file here. We need to make sure that member states are accessing to it, they can use it for what it was designed for. So what I'm trying to be quick, I just want to confirm if you can see my presentation. And then what we are going to do now, as you know, DGKIC, we are in charge of implementing IGIF. It's our main mandate. And as it was many times said here, the big problem from implementing is finance. So now we are having a solution now, because now we are having the guide. Now we need to make sure that this guide can access member state as quick as possible so that they can start implementing it, so that they can start applying this methodology for resolving for financing UNIGF. So how are we going to do it? That's what maybe I'm going to present here. The big problem, what we said is about the financing guide. So before the guide, member state, of course, they understand the importance of IGIF. They understand how they can use from different sector, climate adaptation, FDG, disaster, urban infrastructure, agriculture, as mentioned by panelists and different presenters. But they were facing the big problem of financing. They didn't know exactly how they can cost, how they can present the return on investment, who they will partner, as mentioned, how to sustain long-term, but also how to put in place some long-term sustainable model. Now we have the bridge because the sustainable funding guide is there. It's time now to implement it. Now they have solution to different questions they're being asked. Before, the guide, they didn't know exactly how much the GIGF implementation is going to cost. Now they have the answer. They didn't know about the return on investment. Now the guide is providing the answer. Our partnership in financing, how to ensure long-term sustainability. That's the kind of talking about the finance language. Because before they didn't know those kind of elements when they are going to talk to the finance ministries, but also different stakeholder perspective. They cannot talk to the finance ministry with more details from this guide. They can also talk to the development banks because now they have a tool which can help them in order to assess, in order to estimate everything that they need to be for financing. So we cannot keep on our own. This is very important. We are planning to different activities for implementation because now it's handed over to us. So different approach that we're going to use is going to be because maybe here we need to work on it now because different commitment deadline as 2030. So if we start looking for finance now, taking time to implement the putting in place those geospatial system, it will take time. So this is right now that we need to benefit this guide. We need to start using it for financing so that we will be able to implement and deliver by 2030 on different commitment. So the GGKIC is now implementing some strategic dissemination activities, including the one activity that we are doing, especially embedding this sustainable funding guide in different workshops and training that we are providing to member states through regional workshops that we are doing through America, Asia, and Pacific, and Asia Pacific, in Africa, and the Arab states, and Europe, but also on different activities. We are organizing activities like Jonah. We are attending different meetings. We need to tell them now the big problem of financing the geospatial investment is now resolved because we have the guide in place which can help member states resolve this one. We are also capacity improvement. As mentioned by Alan, this guide is quite big and needs to be in more details. So we organize some integrated capacity improvement model which can go step by step to make sure that not only they have the guide as a document, but they have the guide as a practical tool that they can use, that can understand from chapter 1 to chapter 5, and how they can also apply in a sustainable funding. We are also having technical mission on country level side, and then we make sure that wherever we are going in those countries, especially when elaborating the counter action plan, we make sure that they can understand how the available financing sources, how they can access those one, how they different methodology, how they can make the cost benefits, all those kind of things that the country need to, member state need to have in place. We are also continuing with webinars. Maybe as you have seen, it's very interesting today. Maybe next time we are going to look at how we can organize a webinar on each chapter or e-learning to make sure that member state can benefit this guide in full. But also, as you mentioned, we have donor and development bank partnership. We have a tool which can help us to talk to them. So now we make sure that member states are able to use this guide to get close to donor and development bank and develop long-term partnership. But also, we also, as mentioned, elaborate on case studies. It's very important that we explain why we need this investment. As mentioned, we now start correcting something that we already started. Case study like the one that we have seen today here. We also want more. We are also going to have the one for Colombia, but I know depending due to time limit, but also some last minute change, they didn't manage to present. But we know that member states, they have many cases that they can share with us, and it's now this time that we are going to correct them so that we can put together and the member state and they can have access to make sure that they have now the evidence tool to talk to their ministry. We are going to do this by using different key stakeholders, of course, regional committees that we are our many partners, and national mapping authorities, but also the Ministry of Finance. They need now to understand that we have a tool in place which can help them to understand very well how to invest in the return on investment and why they need to invest in geospatial activities. So I was thinking a bit to go a bit deep, but I think I almost covered everything. We don't have enough time. This is the kind of approach that we are planning to use for sub-regional and sub-regional workshop that we're organizing. As you know, we are attending an annual workshop in the regional side, and then we make sure that we sit down, we do some practical case studies, we do some session about cost-benefit analysis, but we can also elaborate some fact sheet. Members, they know more about variable funding sources, and then we can try to elaborate a kind of fact sheet for each region to make sure that, okay, this is a variable funding mechanism here, because what is available in Latin America is not the same as Africa, it's not the same as the Arab state, depending also on different priority of the region. But we also engage on capacity development. As I mentioned, we will go into our program, including the leadership. We need to make sure that leaders also understand this funding mechanism very well. And we will continue on elaborating to country technical mission, as I mentioned, to sit down with them, do the training, the business case, transform the theory into practice, but also about development bank collaboration. Because I remember when we organized this webinar, I contact some development banks. Some of them, they are telling me, oh, but we are not financing directly geospatial activities. But and then say, okay, if you are financing purity in climate change in agriculture, those are depending on geospatial information for implementation and monitoring. So which means you are there, you are a partner, so you need to also continue in this way. So in a few, we are going to make sure that this guide is attending member states who are benefiting it and are getting enough capacity, enough training, enough capacity building so that they can use every chapter fully of this guide. So we are thinking that at the end of the day, we will be able to partner together to make sure that this guide is helping to resolve the big issue of financing, and the IGF implementation now is becoming from adoption to full implementation. So thank you very much. While finalizing, I just want to tell you that this is not the last webinar. DGIC is elaborating different Geo-Empower webinar series. This is the first one for sustainable funding. We'll continue with other in every quarter, and then we'll keep communicating. We'll be happy to be having you always on board to have this kind of discussion to make sure that we are using geospatial information for SDG implementation and monitoring. Thank you very much. I would like now to hand over to Odette. Sorry, I took some few minutes from your side for closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. I think all of you will agree with me that this was really a very useful afternoon, isn't it? Okay. So as we are coming to conclude this webinar, we are reminded that achieving the 2030 agenda, advancing the vision of the Pact of the Future, and delivering on this Sevilla commitment all depend on our collective ability to invest strategically in geospatial information. The UN IGIF provides not only a technical framework, but a powerful policy and financing instrument, one that enables countries to build resilient, authoritative, and sustainable geospatial ecosystems. This webinar highlights how the UN IGIF Sustainable Funding Guides can support member states to overcome two critical obstacles. The first is the financial gap. Through more integrated, innovative, and durable models, and the evidence gap that demonstrating with concrete examples how investing in geospatial information generating measurable returns, socioeconomic impacts, and cross-sector value. The experience that the case studies presented today show that it is